Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the hidden psychology behind a dynamic you've probably experienced your entire life. If you have ever been told that your quietness is intense or arrogant or maybe just a bit cold, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We are going to explore why your totally natural way of moving through the world gets so utterly misread by the people around you. And we're keeping it strictly to the psychological research and data to show you exactly what is going on beneath the surface. All right, so let's dive right into this question that I know so many introverts have seriously agonized over. You've probably heard it, right? You're cold, you're intense, or the classic, you're just really hard to read. Have you ever been in a room, not talking over anyone, not making any demands, literally just hanging back, yet somehow you made everyone else just a little more careful? You probably didn't even notice the effect you were having. People who do this rarely do, but there is a very specific scientific reason this keeps happening. The absolute most crucial point here is that this intimidation factor, it isn't some behavioral mistake on your part. It's actually a super fascinating consequence of how your brain is wired. You aren't doing it on purpose. Most people spend years feeling like there's something fundamentally wrong with them because they can't put this into words. But as we're gonna see, you just have a natural way of affecting a room without even trying. So, let's kick things off with part one, the accidental intimidator. Moving right into our first major theme, the power of quiet presence. What's genuinely fascinating is how these entirely natural traits form the bedrock of your quiet presence. Think about it. You notice things most people completely gloss over. You pick up on that tiny hesitation before someone answers a question. You spot a subtle shift in their posture. You carefully register what they actually meant to say versus what just slipped out of their mouth. And the kicker, you are completely, 100% comfortable sitting in total silence while you process all of it. But here's where the friction starts. Research from psychological science points out that most people instinctively treat silence like a mistake, like something that desperately needs fixing. When there's a pause, it's not that they suddenly had a brilliant thought, it's that the quiet literally feels like something went wrong. Even a few seconds of unexpected silence triggers a measurable anxiety response in their bodies. To them, a 5-second pause feels like waiting an absolute eternity for a text back. They start panicking to fill the void. Meanwhile, you're just sitting there, totally comfortable. And man, this right here illustrates the massive disconnect perfectly. To you, that silence is deeply productive thinking. You are gathering data, you're analyzing the room, but to the person sitting across from you, your silence feels like a harsh judgment. They feel like they're waiting for some unknown verdict. And because they don't know what that verdict is, they start labeling you as cold or intense, all because you aren't performing conversation on command. Building on that exact thought, Dr. Jennifer Kahnweiler, who has spent years researching this stuff, points out that naturally absorbing the room is actually a really powerful, highly underestimated leadership skill. Your brain naturally takes in the whole picture before you respond. But since humans are hardwired to notice when someone is watching us closely, people just assume they're being judged. They feel unnerved, like they're under a microscope. So when they call you intense, what they're actually saying is, you saw something I wasn't quite ready to show you. Let's shift gears to part 3, depth over social drama. We really need to rethink the word drama for a second. In most social environments, the unspoken rule is that the louder your emotions are, the more people trust you. So drama isn't just about loud arguments or conflict. It's actually a social signal. It's how people prove they are emotionally readable, predictable, and therefore safe to be around. When you don't play along with that because you actually prefer to think before you react, people get confused. You become unpredictable, and to them, unpredictable registers as a threat. I absolutely love this real-world anecdote from the source material. It just captures this dynamic so well. There was a woman whose coworkers decided she was boring simply because she wouldn't keep the meaningless small talk going. They pushed and pushed for a reaction, trying to drag her into their usual social performance. And she shut the whole thing down completely with these 4 grounding words. I'm not your entertainment, I'm your coworker. She wasn't aggressive, she wasn't loud, she just didn't need their approval, and they literally had no idea how to handle it. And there is hard science backing this up, which is so cool. Research on introvert cognition shows that information physically travels through longer, way more complex neural pathways in your brain before you respond. Your brain is literally absorbing more context before you ever open your mouth. So what looks like hesitation or aloofness to everyone else, that's actually deep cognitive absorption. Your reactions prioritize depth over speed. Naturally, this creates a huge disconnect in everyday conversation. For most people, small talk isn't about forming a real connection. It's basically a social handshake that says, hey, I'm friendly, I'm safe, we won't go too deep. But because of your cognitive depth, you just naturally bypass that surface level. So when you ask a real, meaningful question that demands actual thought, it feels deeply exposing to an extrovert who is just gearing up for a safe, scripted answer. To them, it feels like they're being exposed way before they were ready.
All right, let's pivot to part 4, boundaries and emotional control.
Oof, this one cuts deep, doesn't it? Psychotherapists who study introvert-extrovert conflict find a really consistent pattern here. In a heated moment, you naturally stay logical. You respond from the rational part of your mind because you know exploding is just going to make things worse. But the extrovert is desperately seeking emotional mirroring. When you don't match their escalating intensity, they view your rational, steady calm as coldness, contempt, and total indifference. The conversation completely falls apart simply because you wouldn't perform distress just to make them feel less alone in theirs.
Furthermore, you're essentially operating with a highly tuned social filter. You don't just let everyone in because you know real connection takes serious energy. So you watch closely before opening up. You wait to establish genuine trust. And you absolutely refuse to hand out warmth for free. You're saving your energy for worthy connections. Most people can sense this filter within the first few minutes meeting you. If they understand that trust has to be earned, they respect it. But for a lot of people, it feels like an immediate stinging rejection.
Psychologist Ana Manis Mendoza sums this up perfectly. She notes that wearing your strong personal boundaries naturally, without any apologies, reads as pure arrogance to people who have never actually had to earn someone's respect before. Let that sink in. What they are calling arrogance is actually just discernment. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own worth and isn't going to give out unlimited access just to make a stranger feel comfortable.
Which brings us to section 5, the real climax of it all, the ultimate social threat. Here's the twist. Unlike the other traits we've talked about, like how you handle silence or skip small talk, this one isn't even about a specific behavior. It's about the complete and total absence of a universal social need for approval. Most social dynamics run on a very basic, invisible exchange. You validate me, I validate you. Approval is power. But you don't play that game. You don't need the room to like you to feel okay being in it. And honestly, that is incredibly unsettling to a lot of people.
Clinical psychologist Carla Mary Manley points out something absolutely mind-blowing here. By just existing contently without needing external approval, you inadvertently expose the deep insecurities of everyone who does. The usual social tools people use, pressure, subtle disapproval, the expectation that you'll shrink down to fit in, literally none of it works on you. People get intimidated because they fear they don't measure up to someone who is genuinely that self-sufficient. Let's bring it all together now in part 6, a strength, not a flaw.
When you look at all of this, you realize your psychological profile is incredibly rare in a world that is completely obsessed with performance. Because you don't perform for social approval, because you can't be easily predicted by fake drama, because you cannot be pressured or guilted into reacting, and because you are entirely self-sufficient. You stand out. The simple absence of neediness makes you remarkably unique. So here is your big, crucial takeaway. The next time someone calls you intense, remember this. Being labeled intimidating is not a social flaw on your part. It is literally just what happens when someone meets a person they cannot control, cannot predict, and cannot read. They usually don't have the self-awareness to realize that it's their problem, not yours. You're just refusing to play the validation game. I want to leave you with a question to chew on for your own interactions. Are you really that intimidating, or are you just exposing a system they desperately rely on? The right people in your life will figure this out, and they will stay anyway. I highly encourage you to share this explainer with anyone in your circle who might need to hear it today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and keep embracing that quiet presence of yours.